Max Pringle with these headlines. Hurricane Debbie has made landfall in northern Florida as a Category 1 storm. Heavy rains and wind, flooding, and dangerous storm surge are expected. Donna Warder reports.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
We have requested a federal disaster declaration, and that has been approved.
DeSantis says the storm is roughly following the same path as Hurricane Idalia did nearly a year ago, just not as powerful.
We are looking at potentially really significant flooding that will happen, particularly in north central Florida as this storm makes landfall in Florida.
Debbie is expected to eventually stall over the coastal regions of Georgia and South Carolina. I'm Donna Warder.
Vice President Kamala Harris is expected to announce her vice presidential running mate sometime over the next day or so. She and her running mate will have a packed schedule of events this week in key battleground states. Harris effectively has set a deadline of Tuesday to select who will be her number 2 from a list that's been whittled down to 4 governors, a senator, and a cabinet official who was also one of her 2020 foes. It's a high-pressure decision that usually spans several months, but in this case, it's compressed into just a matter of weeks. Harris and her vice presidential pick will crisscross a number of battleground states this week for events. The first stop will be in Philadelphia on Tuesday, and it'll wind through Wisconsin, Michigan, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. Voices across the globe are expressing concern over the growing number of arrests in Venezuela following last weekend's disputed elections. Pope Francis said Venezuela is, quote, living a critical situation in his traditional homily Sunday at the Vatican. The remarks came hours after Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro announced Saturday that the government has arrested 2,000 opponents. At a rally in the Venezuelan capital Caracas, Maduro pledged to detain more and send them to prison. The U.S. official said Sunday the Biden administration is concerned about the possibility of political instability if the arrests continue. The Pope appealed to all parties to, quote, seek the truth to avoid all kinds of violence. Bangladesh's prime minister has resigned and fled the country after weeks of protests against the quota system for government jobs descended into violence and grew into a broader challenge to her 15-year rule. Ishan Garg reports from New Delhi.
The Bangladesh government has now imposed an indefinite curfew. Mobile internet services have also been suspended in the capital Dhaka as the officials blame opposition parties for stoking violence. The student protesters are demanding that Sheikh Hasina step down, calling it justice for the scores who've died in the protests so far. The agitation started with students asking the government to roll back quotas in government jobs, which have now been reduced. But analysts say the youth's anger still poses a massive challenge for Hasina's government. Critics are accusing her of using brute force to clamp down on dissent, as most of the dead and injured were reportedly attacked by the police. Ishan Garg, New Delhi.
The U.S. military is ramping up its presence in the Middle East region as tensions boil over the recent assassinations of top Hamas and Hezbollah leaders over the past week. Cross-border missile attacks have continued over the Israeli-Lebanese border. Charles de la Desma has more.
The Lebanese militant group Hezbollah says it launched a drone attack early on Monday on northern Israel that the Israeli military said wounded 2 Israeli troops and set off a fire. The Iranian-backed Hezbollah says in a statement it targeted a military base in northern Israel in response to attacks and assassinations carried out by Israel in several villages in South Lebanon. The attack does not appear to be part of a more intense retaliation expected in response to the killing of Hezbollah commander Fuad Shukur by Israel last week. The two sides have exchanged near daily strikes against the backdrop of the war in Gaza, but have previously kept the conflict at a low level, not escalating into a full-on war. I'm Charles de la Desma.
And those are the news headlines. I'm Max Pringle.